I'm going to start recording now. And here's our lesson. I'm recording it so that what will happen is I will save this to YouTube, and then I will embed that into your course so you can review it later at twice the speed, so it's not as boring. All right, so the image there, you're going to see that a couple of times. Policies, processes, and procedures. Nice little bit of alliteration there, but the idea being, the important thing is notice the direction of the arrows there, and notice the policies are on top, procedures are at the bottom. So what we're looking at is from strategic, which is performed by the top management in an organization, down to operational, which is the people at the ground level. So policies are determined by our top management. Then processes come from that. And then lastly, our procedures, which is how do we do things in a step-by-step way. So that's basically what we're going to be talking about today. And hopefully it'll make some sense as we go. So as it says there, all organizations are going to have policies, processes, and procedures. Otherwise, otherwise, how do we have the implementation of the view of the top management down to the bottom? Now, when I say the view, we actually have statements that these people make. You may have heard of things called mission statements and vision statements, right? These are put together by the top management, which is basically looking over the horizon. What do we want our organization to do in time, etc. So that's their job. And then they set the policies. The policies are going to help us to achieve that long over the horizon view. On the ground, we have a shorter view, and that's where we work with our procedures. So what is a policy? I hope I've made that point already then. So a policy is going to be rules, as it says here, rules that we expect people to do in our organization. And so, for example, HR might have policies. HR has policies on employment benefits and vacations, etc. Some of those policies will actually be imposed upon them by the law, by the state. So, for example, the state in Qatar determines hours of work, that type of thing, determines holidays that people have to have, determines gratuities, things like that. So even though an employer might decide, well, we like to do it this way, well, yes, we do it this way, but we do it within the law, the labor law that's been set. So HR policy will be set at that level. Student service policy regarding attendance and exams, you notice that we have those policies. So last year they had sometimes they introduce policies and they have to sort of pull back from it a bit, right? So last year they had a policy about 15% attendance, and there was some negotiation regarding that. Password policies, bring your own device policies. Yeah, those, I think you get the idea. So the idea is the policy is set by the organization, and then how do we implement that on a person by person, on a device by device level? How do we implement the policy? Then we have our procedures that sort of lead to that. And okay, so what's the idea of policies? Why do we have policies? So here we have that in the bold. We have several different reasons that we would set policies. Firstly, there to set clear expectations. In other words, what do people in the organization, what should they expect from the organization? How does this come to them? That would come by policies. Consistency, that is that every part of the organization is doing a particular thing in a particular way. Risk management, the idea being that if we're controlling, and I think the key word there is management, if we manage things, we know how things are going, then we're less likely to, or we can avoid some risk. We're less likely to be affected by some risk. And standards, and that impacts into quality, which we'll also talk a little bit about in this lecture. So the first point there at the top of that hierarchy was the policies. What comes next is processes. So policies, we're saying, okay, these are rules that you have to do. And so then based on our policies, we have processes. What are we going to do so that we achieve those rules? What are we going to do so that we achieve the rules that we've set on how we onboard our customers or onboard our employees, etc. So for example, a process could include what is a process for issuing computers? We have a policy that computers are issued to new staff. What is the process that we go through with that? That might kind of sound strange to you. Actually, before I came to work at the College of the North Atlantic, which is now the University of Doha for Science and Technology, I used to work in the UAE, and at the particular college that I worked at there, when the students, when they came to college, they would be issued with a computer. So that was the policy that they had. Every student was issued with a computer. Now, what were the arguments for that? All of those computers had the same mirror image on them. And so the IT people, or the students had to pay for it, but the IT people would manage that computer, and so that everybody, you know, had something that would work in the same way. That meant that when we didn't have to put computers in the classroom, you know, the classrooms were just desks. The students would come in with their laptop computers, and it was okay. And I'm sure you could see some issues with that, but yeah, that was a policy. And so the process, there was lots of processes that went with that. You know, they had to go down to facilities management and get some, excuse me, guys. They had to go down to facilities management and get that all organized for them. There was money involved. So yeah, processes were there. So what is a procedure? Going down the hierarchy to the bottom now, at the top was our policies. Then there was the process procedure. The thing that's key about the procedure is down there in the bottom right-hand corner, right? Yes. That is the step-by-step. We do this, then we do that, then we do that. That's going to be put down by the procedure. That's going to be managed by the lowest level management, right? And it's going to be implemented by our individual officers. So we have this idea of a standard operating procedure. That is where we have written down somewhere, this is how we do that. This is how we do that. And we hope that that happens in that way. For example, how do we install an operating system on a computer? We would have a way of doing that, which we would write down, the idea being that we don't waste too much time and we don't have too many errors and problems, because we know a way of doing it which will work, and we put that through. So university has well, I already mentioned this, right? We say when we onboard a new employee, we offer them a computer if they're in the IT team. And so how do we go about doing that? There would be some things written down. The management would get involved with, you know, who's going to be issued the computer, what kind of computer it would be, that type of thing. All right. So the next slide here is just the fact that, and you know, I got to segue a little bit on this. One of the things about being human, I guess, is we're not machines. We're not so predictable. And if you have organizations with people in it, things are going to change. Things change all the time. And so that's what we have to be aware of. That's what we have to build into our policies and systems. We have to build in the fact that things could change. And so if we may find that our rules, our policies, our procedures, and our processes become out of date. And so we have to be able to make them change. So as it says here, we might have to periodically refresh them, and so that they're aligned. They're aligned with the way the business is working. And of course, that all should come in both directions. There should be some feedback from the line management up to the middle management, up to the senior management on things that are changing on the ground. But also there should be some downward communication from the top management in any changes in policies, etc. Right. Business process management. This is a term that is used a lot in the IT business area, but also in any general business idea. We have this concept of business process management. The idea of it, I see Physic came here. She was expecting to come and sign the sign-in sheet, so I'll pass that around. You need a pen? Do I have a pen? So the idea of business, guys, I'm sorry, I'm getting a bit distracted. There's a lot of sort of chatting going on there. Is there anything that you guys want to say that the rest of us could hear? Because, sorry, I am finding you a bit distracted. as it's sort of going to be a longer lecture that way. Anything? You're good? I appreciate it. All right. So the idea of business process management, as it says there in the corner, I think that diagram is very helpful to us because it shows a cycle, the cycle being an improvement cycle. You may have heard in some other contexts you come across the idea of total quality management. This is the newest version of it, I think. Total quality management is continuous improvement. So continuous improvement requires that we look at what we're doing. We get everybody involved in looking at what we're doing. We feed that back into the planning so that things change all the time and improve. So I think that's just a summary of it. And so the idea of business process management is, as it says there, to avoid wasting time, to avoid errors, to avoid blaming each other, all of these things. The key words here is unorganized and unsystematized. One of the things in management, maybe some of you guys here have some job where you're working, you'd know that one of the things that we say in management is you can't manage what you don't measure. And so management is, a lot of management is we're actually recording things, we're looking at how things change over time, and then we change our policies and our procedures to take that into account. Business process management is kind of that. It's basically, okay, we've got this thing going. The more random it is, the worse it is for us, right? The less we can control it. We can't control it if it's random. And so we're going to apply some management to it. And some of that is going to be through our business process management, where we are continually improving. So these are the goals of that, ideally. And I use the word ideally there, and I've already mentioned that in this lecture already. We're not machines. We're, as humans, we're kind of unpredictable. And so it's very nice that we're going to say, okay, we're going to reduce our costs, but we have to be aware that like every day something different could happen. And so we need to be open to that. But what we're doing is we're sort of setting a framework so that we can manage this in the best way that we can. Yeah. So what can we do? We have all kinds of, we're keeping an eye on, we're measuring, we're recording all of these things. We record our costs so that we can reduce them. We record basically all of these things. Efficiency just means how much do you get for how much effort? And effort could be related to money as well, right? So effectiveness means that, so efficiency means, are we doing it in the least expensive way? Effectiveness means, are we actually doing what we wanted to do? Because we could be very efficient doing the wrong thing. You know what I mean? So all of these things are required of the management to sort of do that. If the managers are doing their job, they'll be aware of all of these things. I'm not going to go into each and every one of those things. I'll leave that to you. Now, we do have to do a flow chart. That's the lab that comes after this. Now, somebody asked me about the lab 1 and 2. We've done lab 1. Most people have handed it in and I've marked it. About 3 or 4 people have done lab 2. Thank you. And I've had a look at that. The rest of us, I said that, look, I'm going to give you a bit more time to do that. All right. This is going to be, I haven't called it lab 3 because the bit of paper actually says lab 2, but there is a lab on flowcharts. Now, hopefully this is easy for you. You've done it before, I think. Right, so you're gonna sail through this flowchart one. So we do have a lab there, but just to give you a bit of a heads up on it, you see the different symbols here. These are symbols for flowchart. Now, different flowcharts can use slightly different symbols to represent the same thing. That's okay. And in fact, I saw for this, one of them was using a process which was an oval. Just like, you know, nobody uses an oval for a process, but apparently somebody does. But generally speaking, we have these things with the rounded edges. Those are going to be our connectors. We call them connectors. They are start and end of a process, or it could be go on to another page. That would be a connector. If you see anything that's a rectangle, generally a rectangle is going to be a process. And there's special processes which could be like if we have a subroutine or something like that, a subprogram, in which case you can have little lines across the bottom. So you would recognize, and we should use those rectangles as a process. If you see a diamond shape, that is going to represent some kind of a decision. So we call that actually a decision box. And, you know, and usually it has a question in it. Do you want to do this or something like that? And it's yes or no. And yes will go one arrow and no will go the other. So you can see that here. This would be some decision. Do you want to do this? If you want to do that, you go that way. And if you don't, you go that way. So that's your decision box. Then this strange thing here with the rounded bit at the bottom, it's like a wave at the bottom. That represents a hard copy printout, generally speaking. So that means we're putting something out. Here's another process. And I guess we've got some other things down the bottom there. So that's a flow chart. In the slide, and you can download this slide. It does give you a link to flow charting software. Look, you can find all kinds of software, drawing software that's going to do flow charts for you. I don't really care what you use to do your lab. You can use whichever one you want. For me, personally, I would use draw.io. I just go into my browser. And so, well, where's my browser? Yeah, this is a browser. I just go into my browser and I would type draw.io. Now, actually, draw.io, that particular thing is, you'll see it's now diagram.net. But from there, you would find that you could draw, and this is just where do you want to save it? Do you want to save it in which of these locations? When you go to do that, you'll find that there's a bunch of flow charts that you could use. You could use those, or else you can just go to the basic, just do a blank diagram. And then once you've, I like this one. Once you've done the blank, okay, so where's it going to save it? You got to give it a name. So I'm putting this in a, and so then you can choose your tools. And there's a bunch of different tools that you can choose. So there I've got, yeah, make sure I get my flowchart tools. And then you can just grab a tool and just sort of stick it on, and you can put arrows on there, etc. If you guys have done 1101, you've done this, right? So no problem for you. I don't think you're going to have any trouble with this at all. But that's the exercise that you need to do. Which one of these is it? Is it the Zoom one? No. Where would that be? I was in the, I guess it's another one. Oh, I've lost my, just bear with me. So here's a little flow chart, just in case you're not, you know this, right? Fairly simple. We start here at the connector. Here is a process. Actually, this is a special kind of process, right? I said rectangle, but this one here's this parallelogram, right? And it's not a rectangle. But what that means is we're doing an input or an output. So here's an input, which is saying get the time from somebody, and then we have a decision. We either go that way or that way. Very easy. So there's some more explanation on there. That you can follow this link to another tool that you could do the drawing with. As I said, I like to use draw.io, but you could use that tool. Use any tool you want. Use Visio, anything you want. Go for it. And I'm not going to spend too much time on the Big Bang Theory. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that sort of TV program. You know, it's been a bunch of young people that sort of, they're kind of smart people that share an apartment or something like that. This guy's like one of the smartest ones. Anyways, one of the, how would you say, disadvantages of being a smart person in this case is that he's not particularly socially adept. You know what I mean? He spends too much time thinking about particle physics or something like that, and not very much time talking to people. And so he doesn't have any friends. And so, you know, he wants to make a friend. And so he's got this flow chart that he made. So how he could make a friend, right? And, you know, what he usually finds is he has to go through many, many steps before he'd actually get anybody to talk to him, because he's a nerd, right? I mean, nerds are awesome, but apparently they don't have many friends. I don't know. I'm not a nerd. Well, but I don't have, no. You don't have to be a nerd to not have many friends. Does that make sense? INFT3301 is not spelled like that. I will warn you, there's lots of spelling mistakes in the notes. I hope that you'll take a forgiving attitude toward that. And hopefully that I give a forgiving attitude to you when I'm marking your assignments. So yeah, there's a spelling thing there, but the idea here is, could you write draw a flow chart that you're a security guard. Security guard's job is not too hard in this case, but they do have a fairly clear job, and I'm pretty sure that they all understand it. Somebody walks into the mall, the shopping center, and the security guard has to challenge them. And when they challenge them, what they will do is they'll ask to see the, well, the two things that they're going to see, right? Are you wearing a mask? And can you show me your EHTERAZ? And they show the EHTERAZ, and if it's green, you get in. So the key there is if, right? The key there is if, because if is going to take us to decision box. And that kind of is where all the work is happening in a flow chart, is in the decision box. That's not where all the work is. Well, it's where the decision work is. And so this is how that would translate into a flow chart. So the flow chart now, please recognize that sometimes these connectors are more rounded on the edges and sometimes they're less. So this is almost rectangular, but it is a connector, right? So we got to start and we got, well, I guess this would be the end. Okay. So at the start, we see a process, and then we got, you recognize that symbol there, the parallelogram? It's not an exact rectangle, it's a parallelogram. So that's an input. We're getting input from the user. Based on that input, we have a decision. So if it's yes, we go there, and if it's no, we go there.
It has to be yes or no, or it can be short and short.
Yeah, as long as it's a decision, as long as you can divide it. Yeah. So you could say, show EHTERAZ, red or green or not green, right? But yes or no makes logic. I think it's easier with yes or no. I would use yes or no. Here's one that's a little bit more detailed. And as I said, we got some strange symbols here. I think that they probably should be rectangles. So yeah, so why did they do that? I don't know. So but anyway, so what's happening here? This is for, when it says service, it's talking about the service desk, because this course, the focus of this course is for service desk. So in the service desk, customer arrives at level 1. Now, you're familiar from previous lesson about the multi-level service model, which we have level 1, level 2, and level 3. We've kind of inverted this here. We've got the level 3 at the bottom, but the first point of contact is level 1. And now they come in at level 1. Level 1's actually going to try and solve issues, but if they can't solve them, then that goes to level 2. I don't know if I'm going to work my way all the way through that. Yeah. Service requests, we're going to talk about that in a later lecture, I think. We're almost done. So you've got a lab exercise to do. You will find that there's a link on D2L, which is going to just say, okay, here's a problem. I want you to draw a flow chart to solve this problem. Okay, that's the lab. The lab is a flow chart. And okay, so there's about 4 more slides. You guys can bear with me for 4 or 5 more slides. We're just going to talk about these other last processes that make up what it might be 10 more slides. Okay, so we're on 27, it goes to 35. Yeah, 7 more slides or 8 more slides. It's just, what are the processes that make up our service desk? Incident management, problem management, change management, service and configuration management. Each of these we should talk about. When it refers to SD, that means the service desk. So in the service desk, we have a bunch of processes. Remember at the start of the lesson, hey guys, at the start of the lesson, we said that we have policies, processes, procedures, right? So here we're talking about the processes that will be developed by management to work our service desk. Now, each of these, I should mention this. Now, that's another spelling error. As again, I say, be forgiving on that. This is ITIL. Did we mention ITIL? Yeah, I've had one. Did we mention ITIL in the first lesson?
Yes.
All right, so we've heard about ITIL. ITIL actually has 26 different processes that it refers to. So you can go to ITIL documentation, you can see there's a sort of a screed on each of these 26 processes. We're going to talk about 4 or 5 of those processes. These are all ITIL processes, and they are carefully defined in the ITIL sort of management software. Sorry, library. ITIL is a library. Thank you, Hassan. So the first one is incident management. Incident management means when customer calls up and says, oh, something's broken. Incident means that a service that should be provided in the IT system is not being provided. Somehow it's broken. We got a broken internet connection. We got some software that's not working. We got a bit of computer hardware that's not working. That's an incident. How do we manage incidents? Well, you could go to ITIL and look at their library and read it, and you could see, or you could just know. One of the main things that we're going to use is we're going to use an incident management software, which we call what do we call that? I mean, we've got it here. HP's got there. They just call it Service Manager. But basically, it's a ticketing system where when the user comes in, they got 3 or 4 different ways of getting onto the ticketing system. They can just go online and open up a ticket themselves, or they can call the service desk. The service desk guy will open a ticket for them. They might be able to go online to a website, and from the website create a ticket. And we can do that here in the college. So we have help desks here that we can just go and create a ticket to. Should I show you that? No, I'm in a hurry, so I'm not gonna. Later. So incident management. Then we got this other thing, problem management. Problem is different than incident. We talked about that in a previous lesson, right? So there's 2 ways that problem is different than incident. A problem is going to be when an incident recurs, happens more than once, keeps on happening, repeats. That means that you got something wrong with your system. If that incident keeps happening, an incident is my computer cannot log on to the network. Okay, so we send somebody down there and now you're logged on to the network. Your incident is closed. Everybody's computer cannot log on to the network. Or every day I come in and my computer cannot log on to a network. Now we got a problem because it's not just an incident, it keeps happening. So that's one reason why it's different, is because it's repeating. Another reason that it's different is we use this, we say, it is the cause of the incident. The problem is the cause. We're digging down to see what is, we actually use the word, the root cause. Why is this incident keep happening? When that is our problem management. Can I find out why is it happening? When I find out what's happening, then we can go and we can fix it. And that's our problem management. That was easy, right? Service request management is not a problem, it's not an incident. But they came to the service desk and they asked for help. We talked about this in the first lesson, which is, can you please install a new software on my computer? Or can you please issue me with a laptop? Or can you please whatever, right? Do this networking installation. That's a service request. It's still going to go onto a ticketing system. The service catalog is basically related to that service request. I'm going through this kind of fast because I think it's okay. It's pretty easy and it's repetitive. That is, we're going to talk about this more than once. The service catalog, what it is the service desk keeps a kind of like a library catalog, which is just a list of all the services that it provides. That's easy, right? So we can go and check the service catalog as a user and see what can they do for me. They can install this software. They can provide this hardware. And so we can go there. Now, change management actually is related to problem management. Why? Because if you have a problem, it's something wrong with the system. So we fix the problem, but we need to record that and we need to update the system and we need to record that in a change management system. So somewhere we're going to record how the system looks when it's stable. And now it's not stable. We had to make some change. That has to be recorded. Now, how does it look now that it's stable again? Which brings us to the last kind of management that we're going to talk about there. which is configuration management. Configuration management is basically, this is what the system is. It's got this feature and that feature and that feature and that feature, and this is how we log in and all that kind of stuff. We did some change management. Well, we have to update the configuration management because the configuration has changed. I said that was lastly, we got another one, asset management. Hopefully that's not too strange. The accountants come in and sort of talk to us about asset management. Every one of the computers here at this college and every other device has got this barcode on it, right? That barcode is part of the asset management system. So basically, every bit of equipment that belongs to the college, the university, is barcoded. Then the asset management people come along and they have some software where that barcode is attached in a database, which says where this piece of equipment is. And then they can do an audit. So like I say, the accountant type people, they can do an audit and say, where are all those bits of equipment? And then they'll find that some of those bits of equipment aren't where they said they were, right? And so we have to update the asset register, we call it. They have an asset register, which is just a big database which has all of these things that have all the computer equipment in it. And where are they? Now, of course, there has to be some management on that. And so there has to be some policies. Who can take computer equipment from where and put it where? That type of thing. And there has to be permissions, etc. Aren't we having fun? All right, so last slide. You're probably not as happy as I am about that, but I think you're probably not unhappy. Business continuity management, we have other names for that too. We could call it contingency planning. Basically, business continuity management is we know that things can go bad. Like, we could, the really worst things is like force majeure, they call it, right? Which is like, we had a huge storm that knocked out our computer systems. Or the power went down, or we were attacked by hackers, something which is going to cause our computer systems to not function in the way they should. And so we have to have some plan so that we get it back to how it should be. And that's our business continuity management. So business continuity management, there has to be some money set aside and some planning and some management set aside so that we can make sure that we overcome these kinds of huge system unavailability. Now, depending on your business will be how much money and how much planning you go into that. So here at the college, that's important because you guys all want to get a degree. But all of the records that we have that go towards you getting a degree, they're on a computer system. So that computer system, it better be okay, right? But the thing about it that better be okay is that we got a database which has all the records of your stuff, and that database is reliable, right? So we have to do backups on it. The other thing we have to do is make sure it's secure because we don't want random people going in there and changing grades. So we got that kind of thing. There's going to be some security involved. There's going to be some backup stuff involved. And there's a certain amount of money and time and planning required for that. We absolutely have to have those grades, right? We absolutely, because you need that degree. That's what you came here for. And that's the only way we're going to get it is if we have some records. Now, that's important, and that would cost a bit. Now, imagine you're a bank. Now it starts to get real, right? Because now we're talking about money, and it's moving around second by second. Your contingency planning is going to be at a more expensive, higher level, right? Because you can't afford to have 1 second of data gone, right? Because that could be a $1 million real transfer that somebody did, and they want to know where that is. You know what I'm saying? So what they typically do in banks is they have completely sort of redundant systems, right? They're going to have like 2 servers doing the same thing. This one goes down, that's okay, we still got it here. Anyway, so we can talk about that later. I think I'm kind of done, unless you guys have any questions. Look at that. I don't think we even ran out of time. So, any questions?